Gaming mice come in different shapes and forms, and I was very much intrigued when Sumvision reached out to me to review the Raijin X Pro, at least I think that's how you say it. This gaming mouse is a lightweight gaming mouse to be specific, and can be found for around £30 in the UK. Now if you're interested in purchasing it, the locally link in the description below will take you to your localized Amazon store, and also down there you'll find some alternative suggestions that you might want to consider. Furthermore, there is a link to my Instagram, and yes, that's a shameless plug, so if you do use that social media platform, I'd very much appreciate a follow. It's at TotallyDubbed, and if you're interested in all electric or hybrid news or reviews, do check out Totally EV. Your support would be equally appreciated. So let's first start off and talk about what you get in the box. Well, it's pretty simple. You've got the mouse itself, a manual, and then you've got these interesting rubber pads. Now the rubber pads are actually a novel idea, and I do like the principle of it. It's essentially for you to plug in the gaps over here and essentially have a rubber surface rather than having this kind of mesh type of grill. The only problem with these rubber pads is the fact that, well, they don't properly stick on. So unless you were to super glue them and then have a permanent solution, they kind of have a lip. So therefore, if you're going to be using the mouse, if you were to take your hand off the mouse, what you often find is that they kind of prise open on one side or actually come out altogether. So while I do like the idea, I don't think they're really well executed, at least not in my opinion, and aren't something that I would see myself using. Now in terms of the mouse itself, you can see that it's got full RGB glory. I'll get into customization through the software section, so worth bearing that in mind. But the biggest selling point of this mouse is its ergonomics, and in terms of its weight, it's around 68 grams, at least quoted by Sumvision, and in terms of the dimensions, they'll be on your screen right now. Now the mouse has this kind of mesh type of grill, and it's kind of a unique type of design. Well, not unique in terms of the marketplace, but just unique in terms of in comparison to most mices that you will be aware of. Now in terms of buttons, you've got your left and right buttons, and then you've got the scroll wheel, top button as well, and left and right buttons as well. Now just for you guys, I'm just going to go quiet and you guys can hear the buttons themselves. Now in terms of the mouse itself, it's pretty well made, and the clicks themselves, in terms of the switches that are found underneath, are the Huano switches, at least again according to Sumvision. Now in terms of the responsiveness of the clicks, I had no issues whatsoever. However, the buttons on the left hand side are slightly hard to press. By slightly hard, I'm not say exaggerating, but in comparison to other mice out there. And in this respect, it meant it's a little bit harder in terms of switching between guns, at least say on Counter-Strike. So something worth bearing in mind, but of course your mileage may vary depending on the size of your hands. What I will say, however, is the mouse is nice and lightweight, as the weight might suggest, and therefore means that flicking it from left and right is, well, a breeze, and you barely feel the mouse in your hands. Now in terms of my hand size, it's around 18 centimeters from the top to the bottom of my hand, and you can see in terms of how it fits, it actually fits pretty well. You can use it in terms of palm grip, fingertip grip, or indeed if you're going to be a claw gripper as well. Given the size of the mouse and in terms of its design, it means that's available. Moving past that, the cable itself is a non-removable cable. It's 1.8 meters long, and it's got a fabric type of braid. I'm not too much of a fan of it because it's a little bit thick, and while it doesn't drag on my surface, I can see it kinking potentially over time, but that's just my experience from reviewing all variety of different mice. Underneath the mouse, you've got, as you can see, that mesh type of look again, which stems around from the back of the mouse, and you've got this polling rate button, which you can change. The only thing I found with the polling rate button is that it doesn't seem to change in terms of, well, it doesn't give you an indication as to when it's changing. So if you were to press the button, you don't really see this unless you were to go via the software. Now the most important thing, however, is its performance, and I don't have an exact details from Sumvision in terms of its mouse optical sensor. I know it's using an optical sensor of some sort, and from basic research on Google, it seems it's using the Avago 5050 sensor, which is not really the best sensor in the world for some people that claim. Now I do read into specs, but then I also want to see how it actually performs in game. So I went on to a deathmatch in Counter-Strike, and I actually found the mouse to be really responsive. I had no problems in terms of dropouts. I was perfectly op flicking across across maps in terms of Dust 2, for example, and I have no problem in terms of point precision or indeed in terms of my clicks. I actually found my performance to be actually pretty good, and for a mouse of its class in terms of budget wise, I was actually pleasantly surprised. Again, your mileage may vary depending on your setup, but for me, I had no issues whatsoever in terms of performance, and I can't speak for others who say the Avaggio 5050 sensor is not good or mainly used for office use. All I can say is that my performance in-game didn't reflect what I read online, and again, I can't really attest to what sensor is actually using because this is just from my Google research, which could potentially be wrong. The only thing worth bearing in mind, and as I mentioned before, is those left and right buttons felt a little bit awkward to press, therefore switching between gun and knife, at least in Counter-Strike, just didn't feel as intuitive as it does in comparison to other mice I've reviewed. So that's the only complaint I really had in terms of the performance of the mouse itself. And now we get onto the software. Now you can see over here you've got 6 programmable keys, and you can see I've got the Counter-Strike settings, essentially 1, 3 and R, but you can customize this to your heart's content. The key combination allows you to go for what you want on your keyboard binding, and indeed you can enable Shift, Control, Alt and Windows key as well if you want, and then you've got a macro editor as well to go further past that. You've also got 3 separate profiles to choose from, and that's a nice inclusion as well. Now in terms of the DPI settings, they're in 100 increments, so 100 DPI increments as you can see, and there's no way for you to tailor it manually, so you can't input the DPI level manually. There are 6 DPI levels to choose from, which is nice, and it goes up to 12,400 DPI and starts from 200 DPI. Now I'm going to change the color over here, and the reason why, and I'll explain it in just a second, is because if you look on your screen right now, you can see that the color of the DPI corresponds with the mouse scroll wheel and the color that's found underneath the kind of the plastic grill. If I were to take it to black, you can see over here that it kind of disables the LEDs, and the reason you might want that is in case you don't want RGB lighting, be it from the side of the mouse or indeed on top, and you just want it completely off. This is the only way that you can actually make the mouse completely off. So it might not be apparent straight away, but something I thought to point out, which is slightly a shame because you can't customize the color of the 2 ones over here to correspond with what you've got underneath the mouse. Nevertheless, you've got a few different options to choose from, and well, really I think this will suffice for most people, and indeed with a DPI setting as well. Now moving on from there, you've got the mouse parameters. That's pretty much to do with Windows settings. You might want to disable improve pointed precision, and then you've got the polling rates to choose from. 1000 Hertz is what I'd recommend, and then the debounce time as well. So in terms of the software, it's pretty comprehensive, but it's got a few quirks as well. So on the whole, what do I make about the gaming mouse? Well, there are some pros and cons about it, that's no doubt about it, like any product in the world. At this price point, it's quite hard to be overly critical, but at the same time, there are some alternative suggestions that you might want to check out. So from SteelSeries, Logitech, and there's some other ones out there, such as from Abkoncore, you might want to check those out, and they'll be down in the description below, as I mentioned before, because they are pretty good budget gaming mice as well. While they might not have that sort of mesh type of grill design, they are still excellent mice that you might want to consider, and if you don't have that much money to spend. So that's just my honest thoughts and opinions about it. Do let me know in the comments below what you make of this gaming mouse, or indeed other gaming mice in the same sort of area. I know some people have suggested some in the past, and I am reaching out to manufacturers in order to try and review them as honestly as I can, as I always do in all my reviews. So if you do appreciate that, make sure you give it a like, subscribe to see more, and of course favourite and share to help the channel grow. Alright guys, I've been Totally Dubbed. Take care and bye bye.